Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Erik Melang. He's the founder of Distributive Solar. Erik, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Devin. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming back. We're really grateful for the sponsorship we received from your friends over at Clean Energy Advisors, and appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with us today to talk about some interesting things. You've got a real passion, I think, for, and I share this interest, for solar in the developing world. It really is a game-changing technology, and I think it may be something akin to the cell phone, the way people have started to use phones in the developing world. They never had landlines in much of the developing world, but they all have cell phones today, just like we do. Do you think they'll be using solar without ever having used coal in many places?
Well, that's an interesting debate, really, because, the grid is very beneficial. And it really is the biggest backup storage that there is, having the grid. So I think there's room for the grid and current sources of energy. But the question is, will the grid reach the last mile to these rural areas? And that's where the opportunity really is how can we expand the grid to reach these in the communities? And how long is that going to take, and will it happen? But what other things that we can do now to maybe enhance that? And that's where the microgrids really are coming into play, where you can have these smaller villages with maybe up to 100 homes and businesses connected on a little microgrid that has the potential to connect to the national grid if it ever gets there, which would be beneficial to both sides of that argument, really.
Yeah, I guess there are 3 tiers, or maybe 4 tiers, of what's going on in the developing world with solar. We have at the very low end lamps and other devices that are single devices. You leave them in the sun during the day, you use them in the house at night. Next tier up would be household solar. Just like here in the US, they're putting solar panels on their roofs to power devices in the house. Third tier would be the microgrids you're talking about, where small villages would be powered by typically solar. And then the fourth thing is utility scale solar that's starting to happen in the developing world. And I guess all of these play a role. That third tier would be the microgrids you're talking about, where small villages would be powered by typically.
I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think? Across those 4, will as the demand for energy increases in the developing world, will they be able to add sufficient solar to meet all of the incremental demand, or will they be forced to build some fossil fuel plants along with them in order to have an operating grid?
Well, I think they're going to have to do that second, because as solar has been introduced to families and more efficient products, so they could get more out of that small panel they have. They have more efficient light bulbs and so forth, but they're going to be demanding more energy. So not only are you going to see increase in individual demand for electricity for maybe a small refrigerator or a fan, but it's gonna grow from there. So we're gonna have almost 800, 900 more million people in Africa by 2050, and they're going to be demanding more energy. So right now, the typical African household outside of South Africa might use 0.5 kilowatt a day. When we're using 100 times as individuals here. So they're going to grow in their demand, just like with food. They go from they want to go up the protein ladder, just like they will with energy. And but it's so crucial. And you mentioned the cell phone technology and the leapfrog there, and I think that solar has that same type of transformative opportunity, because now that they have the cell phone, they have to charge it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go to some place where there's a charging station, and that is not very efficient. But what really strikes me is that the cost of energy for an individual African, they're paying $10 per kilowatt hour equivalent when we're paying 10 cents. And so the people who need it the most are the ones who are paying the most by trying to use charcoal and kerosene. So solar is a solution that can help now, but there's different ways to go. I think we need all hands. We need the grid. We need utility scale solar. We need solar household technology products, that are efficient, and the microgrid. So that's really where the opportunity is in bridging all that together.
But it seems like the Tesla storage devices, tools, batteries will extend the potential of solar, especially if solar costs continue to fall relative to coal. What do you think?
Yeah, the battery solution is, that's part of the expensive part, and really for these off-grid type of systems, they need that storage solution, and that's really what's expensive right now. So at the lower of the pyramid, they're coming in with these consumer products that are integrated with the battery, with the lights, with a meter and the solar panel, all in one little kit that someone can purchase over time through a pay-as-you-go method. And so that's pretty exciting. But the batteries are they're expensive still, but they're definitely falling fast. But how further they have to go for that particular market where they just don't have the incomes and the means to finance even additional equipment.
Yeah.
And so that's what's exciting about the microgrid.
Right. So the microgrid is an interesting solution, but if it's powered on solar, you require some storage or you lose power at night, which isn't all bad if you are charging devices, but it's not very good for things like refrigerators that would run day and night, right?
That's right. So some of these microgrids, they do have storage, and they'll take fossil fuels, they'll take wind, they can almost take any energy source and kind of bring it together. But they do have that battery solution, but they can spread the cost out, over 100 homes and businesses and get that battery solution. And with the smart meters, and when you talked about leapfrogging, that's what's really going to happen at the off-grid consumer level. Is that there's going to be a lot of technology innovation that is bringing technology and a consumer product in.
Better check that out. Sounds like you got your player on.
I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the feedback is going.
What do you think? Across those four,
you've got a video player going on your system.
As the demand for energy increases
in
the developing world, will they be able to add sufficient solar to meet all of the incremental demand, or will they be?
Okay, Devin, how's that?
There you go. So I wanted to ask you, Erik, why don't you turn your volume down just a little bit on your computer so that may help. I think one of the issues this is interesting is the utilities in the United States are, in some states, like my state, putting up barriers to the solar implementation in homes at the consumer level. And one of the workarounds seems to me to be for them to go completely off-grid. Do you think it makes sense for consumers to do that?
I don't think that it makes sense at this point, just because of the cost of storage here in the United States might cost $20,000 for a household to do that, and then they have to finance it. But the grid is the cheapest energy storage, so we really need that. But what's interesting about Africa and the opportunities there is that the grid is not as developed here. It's around the urban centers, but it's really not connecting all the populated communities together. So that's where opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and develop these more localized solutions until the grid can get there eventually and be that backup. But that's going to make it cheaper for everybody. If the local villages can control their own energy through that microgrid and then have the connection to the national grid, that really opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity for them. And it saves the utilities a ton of money that they don't have to build out that last mile, which is the expensive part. So they're kind of converging together, which is exciting. But you know, the off-grid solution is going to have to.
That technology would be valuable in the developed world as well, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to be able to use these off-grid solutions where, you know, these small refrigerators that we used in college, they use up a ton of energy. They're designing new ones like that operate more efficiently for that particular market, which will then come back here. You know, and that's what happened in the cell phone technology there, is they have this mobile payment system and pay as you go that we can't even pull off in the developing world, but they're doing it there. So they're going to show leadership there in innovation on the small scale. And we'll see, maybe instead of the top down everything, we'll see more of the bottom up that's focusing on the end users.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I wanted to shift gears for just a minute, Erik, and have you tell us a little bit about your business. We jumped into a great topic of discussion, but I want to make sure that people understand your expertise at Distributive Solar.
Okay, well, I'm excited about Distributive Solar because, you know, with the recent extension of the tax cuts. And the Clean Power Plan, even though it might not be implemented across the country, states are taking a proactive role there. But the plummeting cost of solar has really opened up a huge opportunity.
And so tell us more about your business, what you do at Distributive Solar, Erik.
What we do is commercial and industrial solar origination. So basically, we build relationships with businesses and business owners and explore with them the viability for their business to put a solar technology system on their rooftop. And really, that market's opened up to a lot smaller and more companies now that prices have really plummeted, even in the last year. And so it's really surprising a lot of times when you see the reaction from a building owner when he sees how the cost of solar has dropped so much and that it's a benefit to his business and he can actually reduce his operating cost. We're seeing paybacks on commercial solar systems in the 5 to 7 year range across the country. And this is where they're paying cash for the system. So there's a trend too, where we're going from this PPA model, and this lease model, which people needed when the cost of the equipment was high. But now the cost of equipment has come down as such that people can pay for, or businesses can pay for their solar system off their balance sheet, which is really the best way to do it, because then you can use all the tax credits, all the depreciation, and those two alone will cut off more than half of the cost of an installation, which is remarkable. And so I think we're on the cusp of this small commercial really taking off, and because of lower cost, regulation, and even financing.
What are some examples of businesses that are using solar successfully? When you talk about the small commercial, what are we talking about? Dry cleaners, restaurants, small manufacturers? What's a good example?
Well, I think it's going to be companies that use a lot of energy and that have good rooftops, light manufacturing. Companies that have a heavy load, maybe a distribution facility that has refrigeration and a lot of HVAC load. But almost every company can benefit if they have the right type of roof. And we're looking for flat roofs, south facing, relatively new, very little obstructions, so it won't be affected by shading. And when they're heavy users of energy, costs are down enough now that they can purchase a system and benefit financially without any state incentives, without net metering. What we focus on is behind the meter, offsetting the energy load right there on site. That way we don't have to go through all the rigmarole with utility about interconnection and all the net metering. We're just offsetting the load right there on site so that the business owner can own their energy.
Perfect.
And with the rate that energy prices are escalating.
So in that situation, they're not generating 100% of their power through solar. It's 50% or something.
That's right. They're going to offset some of their energy. And a lot of times, if it's a heavy energy user, they do not even have enough rooftop to cover all of their energy needs. And now we're seeing a demand for off-site energy production through what they call more of a virtual net metering, that, hey, I need 2 megawatts. My building can only support maybe 300 kilowatts on top of the roof. Boy, if I can just produce it at this farm and do a virtual net metering, then I could produce it at a lower cost, not have to get into drilling into my rooftop, and just a more favorable type system to that. So that's an emerging trend, but that takes state legislation.
Yeah.
To have those type of policies put in place.
Great discussion. Thanks for being with us. Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
You can reach me at Erik, Erik.Melang, Melang, at distributivesolar.com. And we are on Twitter, Facebook. You can check out our website, and we'd love to talk to you, any building owners or businesses that want to explore this opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, Erik, thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you every success in lighting the world with solar.
Thank you, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.